TGIF, everyone, we are back for another In Case You Missed It. We're now streaming live on both LinkedIn Live as well as YouTube for your viewing pleasure. We want to keep things simple and make it easy to find all of this content. And today we've got an amazing guest. Actually, it's a good friend and one of the most accomplished individuals that I know in the GovTech space, Cathilea Robinett, who is our president at e.Republic. Cathilea, thanks so much for carving some time out today to talk to Joe and I.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be here.
So to start, I know that our audience is familiar with e.Republic and all of our great publications, but it'd be amazing if you could tell us a little bit about your journey through e.Republic, because a lot of the things like digital communities and other initiatives that have launched over the years, you've been really the architect of. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I feel like I'm the queen of startups at e.Republic since I started most of the new things along the way. So I started many years ago as a marketing journalism person. So those were my majors: communications, marketing, journalism. Came on board with the company and actually helped launch our digital government summits. So that was one of my first assignments. And that was exciting. I got to work with government officials and industry, develop the programs, really come up to speed on the GovTech market that was really developing back in those days. And then from there, actually, I launched our Center for Digital Government, created our Center for Digital Education, and all of those products, Navigator that we have, and our digital state surveys, our county surveys, our city surveys. And really, that was so much fun just to work with so many government officials and so many leaders, but also on the industry side, it really gave me an opportunity to work hand in hand with all the leaders in our space on the industry side. So I would work with all the heads of state and local government, the heads of public sector, and I loved it. It was actually my favorite job because, I got to help companies go from 0 to 60 and really help them develop their strategy. So that was really fun. And yes, we've launched digital communities for the local government area. And, from there, I've been promoted up and now I'm president running most of our operation. And, it's fun doing this, but I really, really like kind of being with everyone, with the government officials and with industry partners. That's really my favorite thing.
Awesome. Outside of being the president of e.Republic, you're also the chair of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. Can you tell us a little bit about your work there?
Sure. Yes, thank you. This is another exciting thing for me. So Theodore Roosevelt does not have a presidential library, and we actually are building one in Western North Dakota. So, for me, I'm a huge TR fan. He's my favorite president, always has been. And I'm so excited to serve as the chair for this great organization. But I just want to tell you a little bit about North Dakota and why it's so special to Theodore Roosevelt. So his mother and his wife died on the exact same day. And that was actually Valentine's Day. So it was February 14th. And you can imagine how heartbroken he was. His mother meant everything to him. His wife was everything. She died in childbirth. So he had a baby daughter and he was pretty torn apart. And he actually got on a train in New York City and took it all the way across to North Dakota. And he got off in a town called Medora. And he became a rancher and became a cowboy. And he's always said that this was the place that healed him. And this was also the place where the Easterner met the West. And he said he would never run for president if it hadn't been for his experience in North Dakota. And also a lot of his Rough Riders, most people don't know, were from North Dakota. So those were some of those cowboys and ranchers and those hardy folks, because you can imagine what that's like. I mean, you know what that's like, Joe, because you're from Canada. So, those cold winters. So I'm very excited to be part of this. We're building this actively and so many great things about it. We actually have a design competition going on right now. So we have 3 world-class architect firms selected and we will be deciding on the architects, and it's going to be amazing. And if anyone hasn't visited the Badlands in North Dakota, it is really a haunting, beautiful place. I love it there. So I'm excited to chair that, and I work with a great board, and it's really, talk about an opportunity of a lifetime for me. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, that's amazing. We'll probably have to circle back with you after the design's selected to get kind of what the latest update is. So
yeah.
Kind of a key theme in a lot of these episodes, Joe and I talk about what's happening in the world of GovTech, and it would be great to kind of get your insights and your purview on how you've seen things change and really where you think the market is going from this point forward.
Well, it's changed a lot. I've been in this market for a long time, and as a company, we've really helped create this market. So it really didn't exist until e.Republic started the first government technology conference way back when in California. So over the years, it was one of those areas where, some companies would go into this area and not really invest in it. And also it was really seen as one of those places where there wasn't a lot of innovation. What's interesting to me today is that it's really changed. And now it's such an important part of companies' strategies. And, I personally think that that's really exciting. And I also think today you've got these social entrepreneurs coming into our space. So I think there's a lot of innovation and a lot of opportunity. And, I always say, no matter what, government is always going to be here. Cities, counties, and states are always going to be in business, and they're always going to need help. So I think it's pretty exciting, and I find it much more innovative today. And we've got new leaders in the state and local space who really understand technology a lot more than when I first started, and people would look at me with glazed eyes, trust me.
Well, I know we're all passionate, all three of us, about this market. We've seen this market over the last 3-4 months, though, change significantly in response to COVID-19. How is this crisis, this pandemic, maybe different or similar from others that you've witnessed or helped government agencies navigate in the past?
Yeah, Joe, I actually think this is quite different. I went through 9/11, and we really had to pivot. 9/11, we were actually in Albany getting ready to deliver our government technology conference when it happened, and we had to reschedule. So we lived through that, and that was very localized. I also actually really experienced Katrina up close and personal. One of my dearest friends was the mayor of Baton Rouge during that time. I flew in, I stayed with he and his wife. My cell phone, for some reason, had the best reception, so I ended up being his communications director when the president came and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and so many things that happened. But again, that was really localized. So I think those things changed our country and how we respond to things. I think it's different today because there's still so much unknown today. We don't really know when we're going to be without this, and what does that mean? So there's, I think, a little bit more uncertainty today, and I think just a lasting impact on our economy, how we are going to do things. And really, it's a time when we need to come together more than ever. And unfortunately, we have such a dichotomy going on in terms of points of view that I think it's making it a little bit more difficult. So I really seen a lot in our market, and now I'm just looking to those hopeful examples of people who are leading and coming together, because I think we really need to come together. And the great thing about technology is it's really that enabler, I think.
Yeah, I want to dig in on that one a little bit, just because, there's been so many overwhelming responses from state and local government. They've used new technology, new processes, all kinds of radical innovations to respond to COVID. But I know you've been a major champion of leadership and leadership's role in crisis response. And I'd love to have you kind of break down for our audience why leadership is so important.
Yeah, I think what I found along the way, Dustin, was I back in the day would go with my little government technology card. And I've always just been into politics my whole life. And I would try to meet with leaders. And back in the day, they would really look at me with glazed eyes, honestly. Like, we started the digital state survey way back when to really get the due respect of technology. So I think for me, I've just always gravitated towards leaders who get the time that we're in and they're leading their way at this point, because, you know, my whole career has really been in this time of transition, and technology's been the driver of that change. So if I look at leadership, you know, I break it down to intelligence, helpfulness, courage, and compassion. Those are the things I think you need in a really good leader, no matter if that's in a company, as a government, etc. So I look at that, and, you know, I think it's so important today that, you know, leaders really try to lead in this time. And I think we're in such interesting times right now because we're so polarized in our country. And so for me, I just look at those leaders that are trying to set that aside and look at the opportunities and look at this moment to lean into this challenge. I really watch for people who lean into something. You know, I love the book, The Art of War, you know, and you kind of want to take that motion that's coming your way and you want to use it. So how can we use this moment, and how can we lean into it, and how can we come out of this better? So leadership is really important to me, and I really try to identify those leaders that I think are setting good examples.
You're right. I mean, as long as we've worked together, every trip that you'd take, every time you'd come back, you'd shine a bright light on an individual or an example that was doing something great in the public sector. And now, related to leadership, you've got a podcast series called In the Arena on governing.com and all major streaming services. Tell us a little bit about your podcast. I know we already subscribed, but tell those that may not yet what it is and why you're inspired to create it.
Well, sure. So one thing that I did when I became a board member for the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library Foundation was to take this famous quote from Theodore Roosevelt, "In the arena," and it's my favorite quote, right? It's about those people who are tackling the issues, who are truly in the arena, who are bloody, who are scarred, but they're in there, versus the people that are sitting around the sides attacking those people in the arena, or being, you know, armchair quarterbacks. And what I really wanted to do with this podcast was to feature those government leaders who I've known or who I've met or who I want to meet, who I feel are truly in the arena. So first of all, I just give everyone an assignment: go look at this speech. It is so vital today. I mean, this speech today is more important than it's ever been, because we need leaders who are truly in the arena right now. So that is what it's about. I find city, county, and state leaders all across the nation, find those people that I want to interview, and then I interview them in a 30-minute segment. And it's actually one of my favorite parts of my job now, is to interview these great leaders.
So I know, you know, a lot of people in the market may say, well, this is about state and local government. Who's it applicable? Is it just for government leaders? Is it applicable to industry? Tell us a little bit about some of your listeners.
Well, sure. So I think, you know, I just put it out there. You know, one thing about social media you have to do is you have to want to do something yourself. And I think from there, it goes. So I really had pure motivation here to follow and highlight the people that I really have respect for, and then hoping that government they were going to listen, and also industry. And it's been interesting because what's happened along the way is, you know, I have both. And I'll tell you another thing, that one of my secret goals for this podcast really has been for citizens, right? We've really lost this concept of citizenship here in the United States. We don't teach civics anymore. Government has such a bad reputation. And I really want to showcase that there are great individuals maybe in bad systems, but great individuals who are some of the bravest, most courageous people of our time. And they are in government. And I really wanted kind of your average citizen to be able to listen to this podcast and come away and say, oh my gosh, these are just real people doing amazing things. And so I do have some regular folks. It's funny, I'll get some feedback from people that I didn't even know they were listening. And then industry, I really recommend, if you are in this industry and this is where you are playing and selling, listen to this. I think try to highlight leaders from cities, from counties, from states in all different positions with different titles. And I think it really gives you a better understanding of what's happening, the challenges, and you learn something personally. I'm a real personal connection person. And, I want to bring out those personal qualities in our leaders today. I try to do that in this podcast.
I definitely seen that. When you get, even from the big picture kind of understanding that these people are just real people, to your point, you can also get the occasional restaurant recommendation as well. That's always a big plus. But are there any best stories that stand out kind of off the top of your mind, or a particular episode that the audience might check out?
Sure. I think I have a few, because so many people are more relevant today because of what's happening, right? First, it started, with COVID-19 and what was happening there. And then with the George Floyd episode, I want to highlight some of these folks. And I've interviewed a lot of people along the way that I think you would get more insight into with their leadership positions and how they're featured now. So my first podcast was with Eric Garcetti, the mayor of Los Angeles. He's an old dear friend of mine. I was a huge fan of his when he was the president of the city council, because he was really this young, amazing leader who embraced technology. So Eric Garcetti, he was the first interview, and I highly recommend that you just listen to that. He's so articulate, and you get a better understanding of who he is as a person, as you see him on the news now. I also did something really fun. A year ago, we had an event on innovation and performance in Minneapolis, and I had a live in a podcast with 4 different mayors. And it's interesting because you had the mayor of Minneapolis, so Jacob Fry. I had Melvin Carter, who's the mayor of St. Paul, who's right across the river. And then I also had Mayor Suarez, who was from Miami. And if you recall, Mayor Suarez, he was the first elected official with COVID, and he was doing some great social media right in the beginning, showing that he didn't have symptoms and kind of really documenting that for the world. And I think everyone has to listen to that one. It's so much fun. They have so many great things to say. And Jacob Fry says the craziest, funniest thing at the end. I'm not going to tell you, but you have to listen to it, because I can't believe he actually said this on a national podcast. So that was fun. Recently, John Wetzel's the Secretary of Corrections of Pennsylvania. Can't say enough about him and what he's trying to do in the midst of everything. Also, he's an African-American law enforcement officer, and he spent his whole career there. He has a lot to say about COVID-19 and what they're doing, and also a lot to say about our police issue here in the United States. Betty Yee is our state controller here in California. She's so authentic, so passionate. And then Kim Fox is the state's attorney from Cook County. And she really was the person that really took down R. Kelly. And she talks a lot about just kind of her point of view and all the things that you can imagine being the state's attorney right there in the Chicago area. So those are some. They're all really fun, but I get so inspired myself. In fact, it's the favorite part of my week is when I get to do these interviews, because as a leader, I have to keep inspired, and they inspire me.
Yeah, you bring such a diverse set of people to the table. I always really enjoy it, because there's not a specific track that you're on, but you're just bringing leaders from all different circles and telling really powerful stories. So definitely encourage our audience to check it out. And speaking of that, where can our audience keep up with you and your work?
Well, I've been getting a lot of traction recently on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. It's Cathilea Robinett. And, everything gets posted on Twitter. So I'm at Cathilea R there on Twitter. My Facebook is pretty closed because I keep that a little bit more close to home. But Twitter and LinkedIn is definitely a great place to find me.
Well, thank you, Cathilea. Thanks for taking a little bit of time out of your day to join us on In Case You Missed It. Can't say enough about the podcast. We're big fans. We encourage everyone that's tuning in today to subscribe. Take a moment to step in the arena, get in the mindset of those leaders across the country, and see us again next week, same place, same time, 12 o'clock noon Pacific, for the next episode of In Case You Missed It. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.